am your host, Mashuma Saba, M. Saba, and this is our Cultural Variety Podcast. Stay tuned. Peace. And welcome to Coffee Talk Podcast, the Cultural Variety Podcast Show. Welcome to our Cultural Studies Night. And if you missed last night's episode, we'll be discussing the mystery of sex transmutation from author Napolean Hill and his book titled Think and Grow Rich and the Law of Success. Part 2 is titled Genius is Developed Through the Sixth Sense. That's right. So listen, this is for the intellectuals tonight. This is our Cultural Studies Night. If you're not understanding anything at all, just buckle up your seatbelt, have a seat, learn something. And if it's not for you, catch us on any other night because we appear 3 days a week. Coffee Talk Podcast, the Cultural Variety Podcast Show. All right, and you already know who it is. My name is Mashuma Saba, M. Saba. This is Coffee Talk Podcast. All right, listen, I'm happy to be back. It's December 4th. And as we do every week, we have our Cultural Studies Night. It's an alternate night on Sunday, Monday. And last night was a good reading last night. Last night we talked about the mysteries of sex transmutation. And tonight we're going to talk about the 10 stimuli of that before we jump into, excuse me, just dropping things here, before we go into Genius is Developed at the Sixth Sense. It was a great story last night. I would have to jump back in to get you back to where you are. But if you did watch our show, our episode, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what you liked about last night's episode. Did you learn anything about that? Did you start to think of different things that's going on in the world when we were talking about sex transmutation? And here we got, this is what we got to do. Let me slow down for a moment. Before we even get into this, I know a lot of people are saying, well, what is sex transmutation? What is sex transmutation? You know, just listening to it, it can come off as just porn or just sex, two people having sex or whatever. But I want to go ahead and take you a little bit deeper than that and show you the other aspects of sex transmutation. So I'm going to show you something here. Let's all grab our phones here, right? There's your phone. Some of y'all got iPhones. Some of y'all got Android phones, whatever. It's only a marketing ploy. A phone is a phone. I'm just saying, a phone is a phone. All you're going to do is call and say, hey, what you doing? Nothing. What you doing? You know what I mean? But let's look up sex transmutation. The definition of transmutation.
The definition of transmutation: the action of changing or the state of being changed into another form.
The action of changing or the state of being changed into another form. Okay. Let's do one more. Let's break it down even further. Give me the definition of sex transmutation. What is sex transmutation in the law of attraction? What is sexual transmutation in the process of converting sexual energy into a higher goal? Your sexual desires, your organisms, and your attraction to others are all powerful forces. That energy can be directed to non-sexual desires, though. And that's what we're discussing, what we discussed last night anyway. But tonight we're going to go ahead and dive right in and get to talking about genius is developed through the sixth sense. And this is again by author Napoleon Hill, and it's a book he wrote called Think and Grow Rich and the Laws of Success. So are y'all with me? All right, I know you are. Welcome to the show. Now, if this is your first time tuning in our show here at Coffee Talk Podcast, we never start the show without giving you the flavor of the day as well as its wise words. So before we start our cultural studies night tonight, let's dive on into today's flavor. Today's flavor is black tea. That's right. Today's flavor is black tea. Why? Black tea can reduce the risk of heart disease and diabetes, and it also creates heart health by lowering your cholesterol and things like that, man. So that's why we chose tonight's flavor to be black tea, as you can see it up on the screen tonight. But for you, what is your flavor? Go ahead and let us know by leaving that in the comments and also hitting the like button. Go ahead and let us know what the flavor is. Are you drinking on some water, some wine, a smoothie, a latte, a cappuccino, a beer, whatever it is? Go ahead and leave that in the comments. And while you're there, come on in, kick your feet up, relax, and welcome to our humble home here at Coffee Talk Podcast. All right. The next portion of our show is the wise word. We never start the show without giving you its wise words. You know what I mean? And wise words is us here at Coffee Talk Podcast paying homage to our people. You know what I'm saying? And using their words of affirmation for our viewers out there and people that just may need to hear some wise words. So that's why when you come here to get the flavor, we definitely going to give you some wise words, and may you carry that along with you so that it may inspire you or maybe somebody you can pass it along to. You know what I'm saying? This is why it's Coffee Talk Podcast, and we bring you the flavor. All right. Today's wise word. Today's wise word comes from a brother born out of Albany, Georgia. He was born September 23rd, 1930. He's one of the greatest musicians to grow soul and R&B music. Yeah. He attended the Florida School of the Blind. He's a master teacher of rock and roll, R&B, soul, blues, gospel, country, and jazz. He went to his essence June 10th, 2004. Tonight's wise words is from no other than the great Ray Charles. These are the wise words of Ray Charles. Ray Charles stated, "Just because you can't see anything doesn't mean you should shut your eyes." I'm going to say it again. Ray Charles said, "Just because you can't see anything doesn't mean you should shut your eyes." These are the wise words of Ray Charles, and the greatest musicians of our time. And I love the movie. I loved all the movies he even been in. He's been in a lot of movies, y'all. If you want to, look up his bio, he's been in a lot of movies, man. I remember as a kid seeing him in the Blues Brothers, yeah, Ray Charles, man. Bad brother, man. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of Ray Charles, did you know that Ray Charles enjoyed playing chess as part of his therapy when it came to quitting heroin? Did y'all know that? You might not have known that, man, and that's why we bringing it to you live and direct. from Coffee Talk Podcast. But yeah, man, Ray Charles, man, used to play chess, y'all. I know you thinking like chess, but yeah. But let's go back to the wise words. Because when I say Ray Charles played chess, and you might be thinking to yourself, he's blind. How could he do that? Even with a such thing as Braille, you probably thinking that. So the wise words again was Ray Charles tonight saying, just because you can't see anything doesn't mean you should shut your eyes. And I'm just using that as a double entendre to let you figure out, what that means to you, Whatever that means to you, the wise words of Ray Charles, go ahead and leave a comment, man. We'd love to hear about it, man. Definitely open up some dialogue. And again, if you're just tuning in, tonight's flavor is black tea. So let's go ahead and get into our story, right? We got a long show ahead of us. Not too long, We know y'all want to get to, what is it, Monday Night Football and all this sports and all that. And for those that love to sit with us scholars, you know what it is. Come on and enjoy yourself here at Coffee Talk Podcast. Let's go ahead and dive right in, shall we? I did say this, though. I did promise that to get you kind of caught up, because you might not have saw all of last night's episode when we were discussing the mystery of sex transmutation, right? But I did say I will go ahead and give you the 10 mind stimuli, or that Napolean Hill had written here. Let's go ahead and give that, and then as we do that, we jump right into geniuses developed through the sixth sense. Okay, so are y'all with me? I'm with y'all. Y'all with me? Cool. All right, let's go ahead. The 10 mind stimuli. The human mind responds to stimuli through which it may be keyed up to high rates of vibration, known as enthusiasm, creative imagination, intense desire, etc. The stimuli to which the mind responds most freely are, and these are the top 10: the desire for sex expression, love, a burning desire for fame, power, or financial gain. 4, music. 5, friendship between either of those of the same sex or those of the opposite sex. 6, a mastermind alliance based upon a harmony of 2 or more people who ally themselves for spiritual or temporal advancement. Number 7, mutual suffering, such as the experienced by people who are persecuted. 8, autosuggestion. 9, fear. And 10, narcotics and alcohol. So as I was breaking down those 10 stimuli, I want you to take either one of those 1 through 10 and see how it correlates with maybe something you've seen before growing up, or a friends or someone in the neighborhood experienced certain those things. Each one of them probably has some type of situation that you've witnessed or been involved in. Whether that's in real time, whether that's on TV. The stimuli that people develop when they start to become successful, whatever that is. I always tell people success and perfect are like in-laws, they're like cousins. And what do I mean by that? Well, you'll never find perfection. That's what I mean. You'll never find perfection. So it bothers me when people always start their sentences off when they're in conversation or whatever. I'm trying to be perfect. I hate that. I wouldn't even waste my time in saying that, because I already know that there's nothing perfect in this world except for you and I, because we was created in the image of the higher power. You know what I mean? And so that had to be perfect, right? So to search outside of ourselves for something that's perfect, or an action that is outside of ourselves, is a waste of time. So I don't search for perfection, and like I said, they're in-laws. So you have perfection, and the other word I just stated here was excuse me, I'm losing myself here. Success. So success is the cousin of perfection, because it's has the same Synergy. You know what I mean? But what I mean by that is this: success. Imagine you having all $1 billion, right? You got $1 billion, right? You can go wherever you want in the world, as far as like our celebrities do. You know what I mean? You would think that was success. Not everybody, because again, success is a broad thing. But sometimes people think that material things lie to or lead you to success, right? But I want you to look at it from a different lens. Okay, so say you got money like, let's just say, George Clooney or Jay-Z or P. Diddy, right? You got all this amounts and amounts of money. But guess what? Your success will not allow you to walk down the street normally and just say, look, I'm about to go to the bodega and go grab me some wraps and roll me a blunt. I'm just using that as an example. I know you're saying, what do you mean by that? I'm just saying you don't have the freedom to do what you want to do. The average freedom of, look, I'm just going to walk down the street today because you have so much money. So is money the success, or is freedom success? So I want y'all to go ahead and marinate on that tonight. Definitely do that in there. And again, welcome to Coffee Talk Podcast. So we just went through the 10 mind stimuli, right? And I want to finish that little part before we jump into the genius is developed through the sixth sense. So here's the other part of the 10 mind stimuli. The desire for sex expression comes from the head of the list of stimuli that most effectively step up the vibrations of the mind and start the wheels of physical action. 8 of these stimuli are natural and constructive. 2 are destructive. The list here is presented for the purpose of enabling you to make a comparative study of the major sources of mind stimulation. From this study, it would be readily seen that the emotion of sex is, by great odds, the most intense and powerful of all mind stimuli. This comparison is necessary as a foundation for proof of the statement that transmutation of sex energy may lift one of the statues or statuses of a genius. Let us find out what constitutes a genius. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Some wise acre has said that a genius is a man who wears long hair or eats queer food or lives alone or serves as a target for joke makers. A better definition of a genius is a man who has discovered how to increase the vibrations of thought to the point where he can freely communicate with sources of knowledge not available through the ordinary rate of vibration of thought. The person who thinks will want to ask some questions concerning this definition of genius. The first question will be, how may one communicate with sources of knowledge which are not available through the ordinary rate of vibrations of thoughts? The next question will be, are there known sources of knowledge which are available only to genius? And if so, what are these sources and exactly how may they be reached? We shall offer proof of the soundness of some of the more important statements made in this book, or at least we shall offer evidence through which you may secure your own proof through experimentation. And in doing so, we shall answer both of these questions. So let's go ahead and dive in. What do y'all think about that? What do you think about that on this good night of Coffee Talk Podcast? As I did make some cold tea, black tea, threw it in that water. All right, let's go ahead and move right along. Genius is developed through the sixth sense. What are we talking about, Joe? What are we talking about? Genius is developed through the sixth sense. The reality of a sixth sense has been fairly well established. This sixth sense is a creative imagination. The faculty of creative imagination is one which the majority of people never use during an entire lifetime. And if used at all, It usually happens by mere accident. A relatively small number of people use with deliberation and purpose afterthought. The faculty of creative imagination. People don't use it? Wow. Those who use this faculty voluntarily and with understanding of its functions are genius. The faculty of creative imagination is the direct link between the finite mind of man and the infinite intelligence. Also called revelations referred to in the realm of religion, and all discoveries of basic or new principles in the field of invention take place through the faculty of creative imagination. When ideas or concepts flash into one's mind through what is popularly called a hunch, they come from one or more of the following sources. That's infinite intelligence, being one. Two, one's subconscious mind, wherein is stored every sense, expression, and thought impulse, whichever reached the brain through any of the five senses. Number three, from the mind of some other person who has just released the thought or picture of the idea or concept through conscious thought. Or number four, from the other person's subconscious storehouse. There are no other known sources from which inspired ideas or hunches may be received. The creative imagination functions best when the mind is vibrating due to some form of mind stimulation at an exceedingly high rate. That is, when the mind is functioning at a rate of vibration higher than that of ordinary normal thought. When brain action has been stimulated through one or more of the 10 mind stimulants, it has the effect of lifting the individual far above the horizon of ordinary thought and permits him to envision distant scope and quality of thoughts not available on the lower plane, such as that occupied while one is engaged in the solution of the problems of business and professional routine. When lifted to the higher level of thought through any form of mind stimulation, an individual occupies relatively the same position as one who has ascended in an airplane to a higher form, which he may see over and beyond the horizontal line, which limits his vision while on the ground. Moreover, while on this higher level of thought, the individual is not hampered or bound by any of the stimuli which circumscribes and limits his vision while wrestling with the problems of gaining the three basic necessities, which is food, clothing, and shelter. He is in the world of thought in which the ordinary workday thoughts have been as effectively removed as are the hills and valleys and the limitations of physical vision when it rises in an airplane. While on this exalted plane of thought, the creative faculty of the mind is given freedom for action. The way has been cleared for the sixth sense to function. It becomes receptive to ideas which could not reach the individual under any other circumstances. The sixth sense is the faculty which marks the difference between a genius and an ordinary individual. The creative faculty becomes more alert and receptive to vibrations originating outside the individual's subconscious mind. The more this faculty is used and the more the individual relies upon it and makes demands upon it for thought impulses, this faculty can be cultivated and developed only through use. That which is known as one's conscious. It operates entirely through the faculty of the sixth sense. So when you feel like something's about to happen, people, that is a sixth sense. The problem is people don't pay attention to it. Not all. There's people that just don't pay attention to their sixth sense. Your sixth sense, some call it intuition. That's just the way of the wordplay at that point. But everyone has a sixth sense. Tell me about your sixth sense. When did you use it? Have you ever used it to progress in some type of area or workload or your creativity part? Has it worked well for you? Has it not worked so well for you? How do you use your sixth sense? Tonight on Coffee Talk Podcast, the Cultural Variety Podcast Show, Cultural Studies Night, we'd love to hear from you. Make sure you bless us by leaving your comments in the chat box here for us all, as well as make sure you share, like, and subscribe. Let's go ahead and continue. We're almost done, y'all. That which is known as one's conscious operates entirely through the faculty of the sixth sense. The great artists, writers, musicians, and poets become great because they acquire the habit of relying upon the still small voice, which speaks from within through the faculty of creative imagination. It is a fact well known to people who have been imagining that their best ideas come from so-called hunches. So you thinking it's a hunch? Oh, this is a hunch. But there's a voice inside of you that's talking to you. And what Napoleon Hill is saying here through the basis of this is that start to pay attention to your creative imagination and let it flow. Step into it versus step away from it. Step into it. The great artists, writers, musicians, and poets become great because they acquire the habit of relying on the still small voice, which speaks from within through the faculty of creative imagination. It is a fact well known to people who have keen imagination that the best ideas come through so-called hunches. There's a great orator who does not attain to greatness until he closes his eyes and begins to rely entirely upon the faculty of creative imagination. When asked why he closed his eyes just before the climaxes of his oratory, he replied, "I do it because then I speak through the ideas which come to me from within." I want to pause for a second right there, y'all, because I remember watching this documentary on the great Michael Jackson, and it was talking about how Michael Jackson would go to sleep for long periods of time so that he felt like his sleep, or allegedly, because I can't ask him this, but this is what a lot of people said in the documentary, is that he would go to sleep so he can get back into his subconscious, because there held ideas. And that's what Napoleon is talking about when he's saying jump into your creative imagination and let it guide you. This is the secret of the great artists, the writers, the musicians, and the poets. They acquire the habit of relying upon the still small voice, as it was stated. Let's continue. And thank you for tuning in again tonight here at Coffee Talk Podcast. Are y'all with me tonight? Is it making sense tonight? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Only the real ones, man. This is tonight. We on our universal, we on our college levels of intellect. We on them upper echelon levels of thinkers tonight. Tonight it ain't cultural studies night. It always goes hard. But we're not your typical podcast. I'm sorry if you're not hearing about the partying and bullshit and partying and bullshit. Here, we're giving you the flavor tonight so that you can pass it on to another and pass it on to another and pass it on to another so that we can inspire one another. That's what we do here at Coffee Talk Podcast is we give you the flavor. Let's continue because we're almost done. One of America's most successful and best known financiers followed the habit of closing his eyes for 2 or 3 minutes before making a decision. When asked why he did this, he replied, "With my eyes closed, I'm able to draw upon a source of superior intelligence." The late Dr. Elmer R. Gates of Chevy Chase, Maryland, created more than 200 useful patents, many of them basic, through the process of cultivating and using creative faculty. That's opinion-based, y'all, because a lot of patents were stolen from Black people, but that's another story. His method is both significant and interesting to one interested in obtaining to the status of genius, in which category Dr. Gates unquestionably belonged. Dr. Gates was one of the really great, though less publicized scientists of the world. Dr. Elmer R. Gates. In his laboratory, he had what he called his personal communication room. It was practically soundproof and so arranged that all light could be shut out. It was equipped with a small table on which he kept a pad of writing paper. In front of the table on the wall was an electric push button which controlled the lights. When Dr. Gates desired to draw upon the forces available to him through his creative imagination, he would go into this room, sit himself at the table, shut off the lights, and concentrate upon the known factors of the inventions on which he was working, remaining in that position until ideas begin to flash into his mind in connection with the unknown factors of the invention. On one occasion, ideas came through so fast that he was forced to write for almost 3 hours. When the thoughts stopped flowing and he examined his notes, he found they contained a minute description of principles which had not a parallel among the known data of the scientific world. Moreover, the answer to his problem was intelligently presented in those notes. In this manner, Dr. Gates compiled over 200 patents that had been begun but not completed by half-baked brains, evidence of the truth of his statement in the United States Patent Office. Dr. Gates earned his living by sitting for ideas for individuals and corporations. Some of the largest corporations in America paid him substantial fees by the hour for just sitting for ideas. Sitting for ideas, y'all. That means he would go into a dark room, turn off all the lights, and just sit there. And next thing you know, his creative imagination will start to go into effect, and ideas would just start to come out. People paid for this. So don't think this is some fable. When it's being documented, the abilities of your sixth sense is one of your greatest gifts. Let's continue. We're almost done, y'all. The reasoning faculty is often faculty because it is largely guided by one's acclimated experience. Not all knowledge which one accumulates through experience is accurate. Ideas received through the creative faculty are much more reliable for the reason that they come from sources more reliable than any which are available to the reasoning faculty of the mind. The major difference between the genius in the ordinary crank inventor may be found in the fact that the genius works through his faculty of creative imagination, while the crank knows nothing of his faculty. The scientific inventor, such as Mr. Edison and Dr. Gates, makes use of both the synthetic and the creative faculties of imagination. For example, the scientific inventor or genius begins an invention by organizing or combining the known ideas or principles accumulated through experience. Though the scientific faculty, the reasoning faculty, if he finds this accumulated knowledge to be insufficient for the completion of his invention, he then draws upon the sources of knowledge available to him through his creative faculty. The method by which he does this varies from the individual, but this is the sum and substance of his procedure. Number one, he stimulates his mind so that it vibrates at a higher than average plane using one or more of the 10 mind stimulants or some other stimulant of his choice. Number two, he concentrates upon the known factors, the finished part of his invention, and creates in his mind a perfect picture of unknown factors, the unfinished part of his invention. He holds this picture in his mind until it has been taken over by the subconscious mind, then relaxes by clearing his mind of all thought and waits for his answer to flash into his mind. It's science right here. Sometimes the results are both definite and immediate, and other times the results are negative, depending on the state of development of the sixth sense or creative faculty. Mr. Edwards tried out more than 10,000 different combinations of ideas through the synthetic faculty of his imagination before he tuned in through the creative faculty and got the answer which perfected the incandescent light. His experience was similar when he produced the talking machine. There is plenty of reliable evidence that the faculty of creative imagination exists. This evidence is available through accurate analysis of men who have become leaders in their respective callings without having had extensive educations. As they say, most of your billionaires didn't go to college. Lincoln was a notable example of a great leader who achieved greatness through the discovery and use of faculty of creative imagination. He discovered and began to use this faculty as the result of a stimulation of love, which he experienced after he met Anne Rutledge, a statement of the highest significance in connection with the study of the source of genius. The pages of history are filled with the records of great leaders whose achievements may be traced directly to the influence of women who aroused the creative faculties of their minds through the stimulation of sex desire. Napoleon Bonaparte was one of these. When inspired by his first wife, Josephine, he was irresistible and invincible. When his better judgment or reasoning faculty prompted him to put Josephine aside, he began to decline. His defeat and his St. Helena were not far distant. In good taste, if good taste would permit, we might easily mention scores of men well known to the American people who climbed to great heights of achievement under the stimulating influence of their wives. You've heard this before, and this is why they say wherever there is good men, there's a strong woman besides him. Let's continue. If good taste would permit, we might easily mention scores of men well known to the American people who climbed to great heights of achievement under the stimulating influence of their wives, only to drop back to destruction after money and power went to their heads, and they put aside the old wife for a new one. Napoleon was not the only man to discover that sex influence from the right source is more powerful than any substitute of expediency that may be created by mere reason. The human mind responds to stimulation. Among the greatest and most powerful of these stimuli is the urge of sex. When harnessed and transmuted, this driving force is capable of lifting men into that higher sphere of thought, which enables them to master the sources of worry and petty annoyance, which best their pathway on the lower plane. Like, have you ever heard people say, you know, they had to have sex because they had to get the stress off their back. They was in their lower plane and they needed that to come up out of that. Yeah, this is high science here, y'all. It says when a man starts to lack in his sexual indulgence, it's actually killing the man. Look it up. If you think we're lying or we're making up things, you know what I mean? We give you the flavor week after week here at Coffee Talk Podcast Cultural Studies Night. We're almost done, y'all. Another 1 or 2 minutes, and we're done with today's class. Unfortunately, only the genius have made the discovery. Others have accepted the experience of sex urge without discovering one of its major potentialities, a fact which accounts for the great number of others as compared to the limited number of genes. For the purpose of refreshing the memory in connection with the facts available from the biographies of certain men, we have present the names of a few men of outstanding achievement, each of whom was known to have been of a highly sexed nature. The genius which was theirs undoubtedly found its source of power in transmuted sex energy. Let's name some of those people that they're referring to. Number 1, George Washington. Number 2, Napoleon Bonaparte. Number 3, William Shakespeare. Number 4, Abraham Lincoln. Number 5, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Number 6, Robert Burns. Number 7, Andrew Jackson. Number 8, Thomas Jefferson. Albert Hubbard. Albert H. Gray. Oscar Wilde. Woodrow Wilson. John H. Patterson, and Enrico Caruso. A lot of them was presidents. And when you start to think about some of those characters and how they had and what they did, I mean, like, for example, Thomas Jefferson put so many kids out here, he was fucking everything on the slave plantation. Excuse my French. He had that sexual urge, the power to do ungrateful things. Let's continue. Your own knowledge of biography will enable you to add to this list. Find, if you can, a single man in all history of civilization who achieved outstanding success in any calling who was not driven by a well-developed sex nature. If you do not wish to rely upon biographies of men not now living, take inventory of those whom you know to be men of great achievement and see if you can find one among them who was not highly sexed. Even MLK was sexed. And what I mean by, because of power. Sex energy is the creative energy of all genie or genius. There never has been and never will be a great leader, builder, or artist lacking in this driving force of sex. Surely no one will misunderstand these statements to mean that all who are highly sexed are genius. Man contains to the status of a genius only when and if he stimulates his mind so that it draws upon the forces available through the creative faculty of the imagination. Chief, among the stimuli with which this stepping up of the vibrations may be produced is sex energy. The mere passions of this energy is not sufficient to produce a genius. The energy must be transmuted from desire for physical contact into some other form of desire and action before it will lift one to the status of genius. Far becoming genie because of great sex desires, the majority of men lower themselves through misunderstanding and misuse of this great force to the status of the lower animals. Interesting, y'all. Very, very interesting. It makes you think of so many characters. It makes you think of what's been going on with the Diddy Cassidy situation. There's just so many different outlets of thought that short read tonight took me through when we're talking about sex transmutation. So if you hung out with us for this 46 minutes of a show, we'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and leave the comments on Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich and the Laws of Success. Go ahead and let us know what your thoughts are on that. And again, let us know what your thoughts are on genius and how genius is developed through the sixth sense. This has been our cultural studies night tonight. I appreciate your time. And I'd like to go ahead and hit you with the universal peace sign. And until next time, we'll see you here on Coffee Talk Podcast, the Cultural Variety Podcast Show. Peace.